Today is the day. The Premier League starts tomorrow, and that means I need to do my predictions for the league this season. This is the part of the year where everybody hates me because I put their team a couple of places lower than they think they're going to finish, and then it ends up being accurate. So it's going to be a fun season this year, and in this video, I'm going to be doing my full 20th to 1st Premier League predictions, top goal scorer, assists, player of the year, etc, etc. So, what I want to know from you guys is, what are your thoughts? If you want to put your predictions in the comments, that is perfectly fine. If you want to see shorter form versions of this kind of content, make sure you follow my TikTok. It is the first line in the description. But without further ado, let's get into it. In a massive shock horror, I'm going for one of the promoted teams to finish bottom of the Premier League this season. I'm putting Bournemouth in 20th. I'd love to make it a bit different and put them higher up the table, but I just don't really see any reason to do that based on the team itself and everything like that. So, prove me wrong. Please, Bournemouth, make the league interesting this year, but it always seems the case that a couple of the promoted teams end up going back down, and Bournemouth feel like probably the weakest one, so I'm putting them bottom. In 19th, I'm going with Fulham. Now, this is purely dependent on whether Mitrovic does as average as a lot of us expect based on his previous seasons in the Premier League. Yes, he breaks insane goal-scoring records in the Championship, but in the past, when he's taken the step up at Newcastle and Fulham before in the Prem, it just hasn't really worked out. And so I feel like that may happen again this season, and if he isn't firing, then the rest of the squad is really going to struggle without him. And so I don't feel like the rest of the players are quite up to the level that they need to be to make that step. Again, I might be wrong. However, I'm putting Fulham 19th. In 18th spot, I'm putting Brentford. And as sad as this is, I feel like they're going to be one of those clubs that has the classic second season syndrome, especially after losing Eriksen. Not managing to retain his signature in this summer is a big loss. He was making a very, very substantial difference when he came in, and is one of the reasons why they seem to do so well. I do like Thomas Frank, and they do have some decent players, to be fair to them, especially like Tony, who didn't do as bad as people seem to think that he did last season. Obviously, he didn't hit the highs of the numbers that he had in the Championship the season before. That was never going to happen, though. He still did okay. But I just feel like maybe they're going to be a bit burnt out and just not be able to come up with the solutions that they did in the first half of the season or whatever. So, yeah, sadly, Brentford in 18th. Just about staying up in 17th, I'm putting Wolves. And maybe this is a bit of a controversial one. However, they weren't good. They are now going into the season without Jimenez. Again, he's injured. And I just don't really feel like they're making the strides that they need to in order to really pump themselves back up. They started last season really well and then just dropped and dropped and dropped for second half of the season, maybe even a bit longer than that. They started superbly and they had a great defensive record. They weren't scoring much, but as soon as that defensive record faltered, the lack of scoring really caught up with them. Now, they do have people back from injury for this season, and you could be seeing people like Pedro Neto flourish, but I think that might be enough to keep them up, but not much more than that. I just don't really see enough from Wolves to really excite me at all, and so I'm putting Wolves down in 17th. 16th, I'm going with Everton. Again, maybe slightly controversial. However, I just don't really see what reasoning there would be to really put them very high this season. They didn't really look good at all under Lampard. Signings, I mean, Richarlison's gone. It's been underwhelming from their point of view. And so I just don't really have much faith at all. Maybe Lampard will prove me wrong. He did okay with Chelsea in his first season there, but since then it's been So I just don't really have anything that I can really go off right now to put them higher. They're going into the season again, like Wolves, with an injured striker in Calvert-Lewin. Richarlison's gone. Your goal threat is lacking. They really need a good start to the season because whilst, yes, they did stay up, it shouldn't take staying up for Everton fans to be happy. It's really, really not like that. So you've got to hope for their sake that they basically bounce back from what was... Just wipe that season out of their memory and they'll be happy with that. So, again, I hope for Lampard and the players' sake and the fans that they do better than this, but I just don't have any reason to believe they will. In 15th, I'm putting Nottingham Forest. I think that these are going to be the best of the 3 promoted teams. Got an incredible manager. The one thing that worries me is that they may be doing a Fulham. When they came up a couple of years ago, they spent like 100 mil on basically a fresh new team, and it didn't work out for them. Forest have spent a lot of money on a lot of players. It is the one worry, but going from basically bottom of the championship to getting promoted is not something that happens. And so with the, I guess, motivation, the manager and everything like that, I just feel like they are going to do enough to have an okay finish in the Prem this season. I really, really do think that they will comfortably be the best of the 3 that have gone up, despite obviously Fulham absolutely smashing it in the league and everything like that. I think that this is going to be the case. So yeah, Forest up in 15th. In 14th, I'm putting Southampton. And I don't know if I trust myself with this one. I'm really, really tempted to actually move them down, but I've locked my things in, and if they're wrong, they're wrong. But I really like Hasenhüttl, and I like some of the players that Southampton have, like Adam Armstrong. Really, really good striker. They've got Aribo, who also looks like a very good player, who could be really, really vital for them this season. So I'm looking at them, and I don't know if I randomly just have a soft spot for Southampton, but I feel like they can do well. And I'd like them to not really have any kind of worry of going down. They've had patches over the last season or 2 where they've looked a little bit dodgy, but I'm going to stick with the faith in them. 13th, I'm going with Leeds. Now, they've lost Calvin Phillips. They've lost Rafinha. Yes. However, they have brought in a couple of different players. They've also gone from Bielsa to Jesse March. Roca from Bayern Munich looks like he's going to be a very nice signing. Bamford is scoring in pre-season. If they can have him fit for the season, that's an instant difference maker. He was out for basically the whole of last year, which is why people like Rafinha was so important for them. Rodrigo. They've also signed Sinistera this season. So, whilst at times I thought they were gone last season, I was surprised that they managed to stay up, to be honest with you. I thought they were goners. But I think that they're in a better place than they were going into last season. And obviously you can't predict injuries and stuff like this. And obviously there's also multiple weeks of the transfer window left open. I would love to do my predictions post-transfer window, but the fact is you've got too many games before that happens that it already gives you a good idea. I feel like it's a little bit cheaty. So as it stands, I think Leeds will do okay. So yeah, 13th place for Leeds for me. I'm putting Brighton in 12th. Graham Potter, really, really solid manager. And I feel like he can get the most out of what isn't an incredibly talented group of players. His systems and everything like that, he seems to know how to utilise their strengths. You've got great fullbacks. As it stands, Cucurella hasn't gone. He probably will, but him on one side, Lamptey on the other, if he's going to be fit this season, really, really excited to see more of him. And I just feel like this is the case where if you swap the manager out for someone else, you'd probably put Brighton in the bottom 3. And that used to be the case a few years ago. They were in my bottom 3 each year in the predictions, but Potter has proved me and many people wrong in the fact that he's pretty good. And if some of the big teams got rid of their manager at some stage, it wouldn't surprise me to see him go to them. But yeah, I'm putting Brighton up the table. 11th, I'm putting Crystal Palace. Is this a bizarre one? Maybe. But I like the way that Vieira's doing things with Palace. They've got a nice set of younger players coming through. People like Eze, Elise. Really, really exciting. And you've also got just what is now a stalwart of that Palace side in Wilf Zaha. I mean, basically every summer it seems like he's probably going to leave, but then he ends up staying and he scores like 10 plus goals and he does really well for them. I feel like Vieira, especially with a pre-season under his belt now, is really going to have drilled in his philosophy into this side. And there were really, really promising times, especially towards the end of last season in certain matches, where you could see what he was going for. It didn't quite click, but you can see what was being attempted. And so maybe this season, it's time. We move into the top 10 now. Aston Villa 10th. I know people are putting Villa higher than this, and I can't really understand why. I feel like they underachieved a bit last season. It was a bit lackluster. However, the reason why I haven't put them lower in bottom half is because they have made some good signings. Some really, really solid signings. Diego Carlos is huge. Kamara is really, really solid in that middle of the park position. But even if you ignore them, if you go into the season now and you actually have fit starting 11s, Coutinho in the middle, with Buendia, who is a baller, and they missed him so much last season throughout injury and everything like that. Buendia, Leon Bailey, if he's going to be fit and firing this season, unlike last year, again, like Buendia, and then either Ollie Watkins or Danny Ings up front, I feel like they have to do better than last year. I still don't think that they're going to be as high up the table as other people are putting them, but I think they do have a good chance, so that's why I'm putting Aston Villa in 10th. Leicester in 9th for me. I feel like we're going to be very Marmite in people's predictions. We're either going to be in like the top 7 or probably bottom half. And I feel like a lot of people are doing that because they don't really understand the transfer situation. As it stands, we haven't brought anybody in. I'd be amazed if we don't at this stage. However, we have just lost Kasper Schmeichel. We're probably going to lose Tielemans. Maybe Fofana, but I'd be very surprised if we did. Our problem right now is we have too many players and too much wages. Although Kasper leaving as like joint top earner, over 100 grand a week, massively frees that up. So that's no longer as much of a problem. I think we will go out and get some signings and hopefully they will improve us in the areas that we want. However, as it stands going into this season, Ricky P is our only player that is injured for more than like the first game of the season. And so we are very, very close to having our starting 11 exactly as we want it, when for years we haven't been able to do that. Last season, Fofana was out for basically the whole of the season. You had Ndidi playing centre-back for half of it as well, and then he was injured for other parts as well. Vardy got injured, Barnes was injured. We had massive, massive injury problems for 2 years running. And so my prediction is based on us not being as unlucky with injuries this season. I think Daka will come good this season. He had a decent start last year. Dewsbury Hall has basically been like a new signing since he came in last season. Due to the injury problems we had, he started and then basically started every single game since. So I'm positive, but I'm not overly optimistic in terms of like getting European football or anything like that. We are obviously not in Europe this season, which means less chance of injuries, less game congestion. That should help us. But our defensive frailties last season cannot be ignored. Conceding by far the most goals from set pieces and corners. They were like penalties for other teams. It was ridiculous. Maybe things will change now that Kasper isn't here. Maybe whether it's Danny Ward or Everson, maybe they'll actually come out for crosses more and that will alleviate that problem. We'll have to wait and see. But I think 9th is fairly realistic in terms of finish for Leicester this season. 8th, I'm going West Ham. Made some okay signings so far, and I feel like that's just going to build on top of what they were doing last season. They had a really, really good season under Moyes. Fell away a bit at the end, unfortunately missing out on the Europa League and are now in the Conference League. Whether they take that seriously or not, we'll have to wait and see. But getting Scamacca in up front so that they finally don't have to rely on an ex-right back playing up front in Antonio, keeping Bowen, keeping Declan Rice, massive. Absolutely massive. Getting a brand new centre-back in as well. I feel like there's only really positives to take from West Ham right now, and they look like they are definitely going in the right direction and pushing up the table with each season that goes by. That may fail next season when they lose some of their players, but for now, I think they're going to do pretty well. I'm putting Newcastle 7th. Now, I don't want to do this. However, I can't ignore how their January signings last season changed things around. And so even though they haven't gone absolutely huge in this summer window, we have another one mid-season where they can splash even more cash. And I feel like things are just going to get better and better and better for them. Their form under Eddie Howe from like the new year to the end of the season was top 4 level. So it's kind of hard to just disregard that and say, oh yeah, it was purely due to the money, because it wasn't exactly. I mean, they bought Chris Wood for like 35 million. He was garbage. They didn't purely rely on those kind of signings. So it's a tricky one with Newcastle, and I don't want to put them too high. I'd like to put them a little bit lower, but as I say, with that January window, got to be factored into things. As crazy as it is for me to say, Newcastle 7th. 6th, I'm going Chelsea. I know. Controversial, right? But the reasoning isn't necessarily Chelsea themselves, but the other teams in and around them. Obviously, we all know they have failed to sign players that they've wanted to go for. Rafinha was a big one. Koundé was a massive one. They have managed to bring in Koulibaly. Lukaku was a flop, and so he's gone back to Italy. Werner's probably going to be leaving on loan as well. They have brought in Raheem Sterling, but I just don't see him as being the catalyst that they need for things to massively change. And so, yes, there's a couple of weeks left in the window. Maybe they would buy Fofana. Maybe they'll end up getting someone like Frenkie de Jong. We don't know. As it stands, that is what I'm basing my table off of, is the squads as they are at the time of recording, day 1 of the Premier League. I just feel like everyone else around them has strengthened way more than they have. And first half of the season, their defensive record was unbelievably good, and it just fell off a cliff. They started dropping away from City and Liverpool comfortably and ended up nearly getting involved in a battle for top 4 when they basically had 3rd wrapped up for most of the season. They did basically what we did a couple of seasons ago, but we dropped out of it at the end. So, pretty mad, really. And I just feel like, as mad as it is to say, I'm putting Chelsea 6th. 5th, I'm going with Arsenal. They have made some decent signings, haven't they? Gabby Jesus is a really, really good one for them. Him alone is absolutely fantastic. Zinchenko, another really impressive one. They may end up getting Tielemans off of us. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Also bringing in a new number 10. There are positives to take from Arsenal. However, we can't ignore what happened last season. The bottle to not get Champions League was pretty poor. And whilst Arteta seems to be improving, he still isn't at that elite manager level status yet. And so it's hard to say that he will finish above these elite level managers. I do have more faith in Arsenal than I have had in previous seasons. Again, I think this Gabriel Jesus signing is a really good one. And I know that the general consensus is that it's good. I think it's more than good and could really be what they've been lacking for a little while now. So I kind of like to put them higher, but my reasonings for the others, I think, justify putting Arsenal in 5th. 4th place, I'm going Man United. I just think that Ten Hag is going to be that catalyst for change at Man U. And whilst their transfer window hasn't been outstanding, they've been going after Frankie de Jong for what feels like forever now. Lisandro Martinez to come in, most likely beside Maguire, maybe even a back five at some point with him and Varane, we'll have to wait and see, is a really, really solid one. The fact that they have got Martial back, although he is injured for the first game, been looking really good in pre-season. The link-up play between him, Rashford and Sancho has been phenomenal. And so, whilst you don't read too much into pre-season, you can clearly tell that different tactics are being utilised from under Ollie and basically everyone for the last few years, to be honest with you. So maybe this is finally what Man U have needed in this big top-tier manager to really take the club back up to where it should be. Whether Ronaldo stays or goes, honestly, I'm not too sure whether it makes too much of a difference, to be honest with you. Your team will play differently with Ronaldo in it, and with the way that Ten Hag likes the pressing and stuff like that, you may be better off as a collective in that regard. Obviously, Ronaldo will get you goals, but we'll have to wait and see whether anyone actually wants to sign him, because he would happily go right now. Eriksen, really, really good player to pick up on a free. Really annoyed at Man U because we were in the running for him. Us, Brentford, and Man U. And he did decide to go there. I think he's going to be an incredible player to have in the squad. Bruno, I don't think is going to play every single game. Rotate him and Eriksen. Wow. Incredible. So I don't quite think that they're going to have the cohesion to finish higher. However, I think Man U get top four. Third, I'm going with Tottenham. They looked really, really good under Conte. And the way that he managed to get them Champions League after the start that Nuno had is incredibly impressive. He's now brought in a couple of his own signings in people like Perisic, Basuma. Richarlison is a huge, huge player to get, especially with the 5 subs rule that's going to be in this season. They now have a front 4, basically, that they can rotate of Son, Kane, Kulusevski, who balled out as well. What a signing he's turned out to be. And Richarlison. So, I don't really understand how they wouldn't get top 4. And I feel like they will be pushing for that 3rd spot this season. I just think that they're really good. And whilst Conte's there, you cannot underestimate Tottenham. Second, I'm putting Liverpool. And it's no real fault of Liverpool that they're in second for me. I think that they are incredible. Darwin Núñez is probably going to turn out to be a really good signing for them. And kind of what they've lacked in terms of actually having a proper striker. The last few years, you've potentially seen Mane go into the middle, and he's going to be a big loss. However, Luis Diaz, we all saw his quality that he had. And a bit like Spurs, you've now got a front 4 of Salah, Núñez, Diaz, and Jota that you can rotate, which is just amazing. Absolutely amazing. Konate is going to be missing the start of the season, but I think that once he's back, him and Van Dijk are going to have a phenomenal partnership. And you just can't write Liverpool off of being incredible, because they are. Under Klopp, this team just has no fear, really. The problem is, the team that I'm putting to win the league are just too good. First place, Man City. They're just too good. They've bought Haaland. Do I need to say anything else? I don't think so. They won the league last year without a striker. They've now got one of the best young strikers or young players in the entire world. I mean, it's just not fair, is it? They've also got Calvin Phillips, so they can rotate in the midfield. Rodrigo, him, Gundogan, etc. They're just too good, really. So, yeah. I don't think you can look past Man City with this Haaland signing to win the league. So now let's get into some of the other bits and bobs. Let's start with the Golden Boot. Now, I may have just bigged up Haaland and Núñez. I think Harry Kane will win the Golden Boot. I think a full season under Conte, especially with people like Perisic now, maybe even Jed Spence if he starts as well. You've got even more attacking options to whip balls in and get him involved. I think Kane is going to absolutely smash it this season. You could argue for Son as well because of how well he did last year. I just think Kane's the man, though, especially with penalties and everything like that. I think he's going to win it this year. Obviously, you can't write off someone like Haaland, who is phenomenal, but I'd rather go out maybe a little bit on a limb. Harry Kane. Next up, most assists. Golden Ball this season, KDB. And whilst those two things may not quite correlate, you'd think maybe I'd go with Haaland if I'm therefore going with KDB, but City, I think, may spread goals. Haaland may not be playing every single game. You've got Alvarez as well, who looks really good, who's probably going to be playing some of the matches as well. I think KDB, though, is going to be at the heart of everything, whether he's spraying balls to either the strikers, to Grealish, Foden, Riyad, Bernardo, all of these guys. I think if we get a full season with no injuries from KDB, it's very hard to look past him as getting the most assists. Next, the Golden Glove. I'm going with Ederson, and because I think they'll win the league. Simple as that. You don't really win the league without keeping a lot of clean sheets, so it's just logical. There's not much more that needs to be said. Player of the Year up next. Again, I'm going with KDB. As I said previously for the assists, I think he's going to be the heartbeat of the team this season and really linking up everything, especially with Haaland and Alvarez making those runs up front now. I think he's going to be phenomenal. We know his quality, obviously, and a full season of Kevin De Bruyne, I think he wins Player of the Year. Young Player of the Year, next. I think Phil Foden will win it, and this doesn't mean that I think that he will deserve to win it. I think that he will win it, regardless of that fact, just because he is the media darling of this Man City team. He's young, he's English, he's left-footed, which apparently matters as well. So even if there are players better than him this season, I think he wins the award. And an absolute punt of an award, Goal of the Season. I'm going to go with Heung-min Son. This is a complete random punt, but I thought I'd whack it in there because why not? It's one of those where you could basically put any player in the league. You could put Harvey Barnes here or Craig Dawson. You never know what's going to happen in a Premier League season. However, we know the quality of Son. He could run from the halfway line again. He could score an absolute banger like he did against Arsenal from like 30 yards curling top bins. Heung-min Son, Goal of the Season. So there we go. Those are all of my Premier League predictions for the 22-23 season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. We will be doing match week predictions, and so each week I will be doing predictions for each game, and then we'll review those once the match week is over. I will be doing stuff to do with fantasy football as well, reviewing how my team did and any changes that I may plan on doing going forward. All of this will be available on this channel, so make sure you subscribe. And if you want to see the shorter version content, make sure you go and follow my TikTok as well. But thank you very much for watching. I'm so excited for the Prem to be back. It's going to be incredible. I'll see you guys for more. Goodbye.